the broken clasp struck the coup map as guards barred the High Council. Black-red ink crossed the northern passes. Mora raised a decree, bells rang, and Lysandra understood every compromise had become a weapon. Lysandra woke with her fist closed around intact silver. Music filled the Rose Palace banquet 8 months earlier. Wine, rose-gold lamps, and Celine's nervous laugh matched memory. She did not pray. She counted exits. In the succession hall, Queen Mora announced that Princess Celine would inherit. Applause moved in careful waves. Publicly disinherited beneath pearl banners, Lysandra felt the intact crown clasp catch winter light at her shoulder. Celine accepted with a practiced smile. As her hand neared the oath glass, Lysandra saw black-red border ribbon hidden beneath its crystal base. In the first life, that ribbon had sealed away 3 northern passes. Duke Ren Arden entered, snow melting from dark hair. Northern officers filled the steps, but he ordered every soldier outside. He crossed the hall alone, jaw scar pale beneath the lamps. In a side chamber, Ren offered soldiers for civilian defense and lawful counsel. No coup or marriage bargain. Lysandra set down the clasp. Your army guards roads, not my claim. That is why I came. Ren expected urgency. Lysandra gave him conditions. No northern soldier would enter the capital without a public request from the council. Supply wagons would carry civilian seals. Command orders would be copied to provincial magistrates. If he wanted her trust, his power had to leave a trail. Ren read the clauses twice, then asked for ink. You negotiate like the table has teeth. It did, last time, she said, and signed only a temporary defense compact. At the banquet's edge, Mora praised Lysandra's composure loudly enough for foreign envoys to hear. The compliment was a cage. A severe daughter should accept correction gracefully. Lysandra answered with a bow and asked whether the succession treaty would be opened for public review. Music faltered. Mora smiled. There is no treaty. Across the room, Chancellor Ivan Sol lowered his eyes too quickly. Lysandra marked the reaction and let the orchestra resume. Celine found her beside a rose-glass window. You could congratulate me, she said. Lysandra remembered the first life, when those same lips had signed emergency decrees while soldiers dragged witnesses away. Yet Celine's fingers shook around her cup. Lysandra asked one question. Have you read every annex attached to your oath? Celine's smile thinned. Mother said the northern terms were ceremonial. Then ceremony is about to cost you 3 passes. Before dawn, Lysandra entered the Rose Palace record gallery with her old border credentials. Mora had not yet revoked them. Memory gave her only the timing. She requested shipping ledgers, treaty indexes, and appointment debts, not the forbidden succession file. The clerk produced stacks of harmless-looking accounts. Lysandra searched for absence. 3 northern custom stations had stopped reporting toll projections on the same date. Someone had already begun treating the passes as surrendered. Ivan arrived carrying a lamp and irritation. Princesses are not permitted to audit state accounts before breakfast. Lysandra showed him the missing projections. His annoyance changed shape. He insisted the gaps were clerical. She asked him to certify that statement in writing. He refused. Then help me find the mistake, she said, before your silence becomes part of it. Ivan glanced toward the locked treaty cabinet, and for the first time, fear outweighed habit. Mora summoned Lysandra to the private rose salon. The queen spoke gently about exhaustion, grief, and the danger of appearing unstable after disappointment. Lysandra recognized the first step of the old campaign. Concern made official, then incapacity made legal. She requested a physician chosen by the council and offered to publish the examination. Mora's hand paused over the tea. Must everything be public? Only the things used to remove a person from public life. Ren waited in the palace courtyard, surrounded by no soldiers and several offended courtiers. He had brought a northern frost lantern in a plain iron case. Under its blue light, coerced oath glass fractured black-red. The test could reveal pressure, but not who applied it or why. Lysandra refused to use it secretly. A hidden miracle is just another rumor. Ren nodded. Then we make the rules visible before the result. They agreed to seek a lawful inspection. Lysandra returned to the succession hall after the guests departed. The black-red ribbon was gone. Only a faint wax line remained beneath the crystal table. She pressed paper over it and rubbed charcoal across the surface, capturing the seal's braided border pattern without opening anything. The mark matched northern customs bindings, but one strand curved backward. A palace copyist had imitated a provincial seal and made a small, arrogant mistake. Celine entered in her coronation rehearsal gown and caught Lysandra kneeling by the table. "Are you trying to ruin me?" she asked. Lysandra rose slowly. "I am trying to learn whether you are being crowned or positioned." Celine laughed once, without humor. "You always make concern sound like an indictment. And you make trust sound like a substitute for reading." Neither apologized. Celine left, but she looked back at the charcoal impression. By midday, Mora revoked Lysandra's border office and reassigned her staff. The decree framed it as rest. Lysandra had anticipated dismissal, not the speed. Changed choices were already breaking the map in her memory. She copied every lawful record she still held, returned the office seal in public, and asked the clerk to note the exact hour. People could change. Paper could be amended. Timestamps were harder to persuade. Ren offered her rooms in the northern embassy. Lysandra declined, accepting shelter would let Mora call her his dependent. Instead, she moved into an unused suite above the palace kitchens, where steam fogged the windows and servants heard every noble rumor. Ren stared at the narrow bed and said, "This is strategically terrible." Lysandra opened the dumbwaiter panel, revealing 3 corridors. "It is strategically loud," he conceded with a reluctant half-smile. That night, an anonymous packet slid through the kitchen hatch. Inside lay a torn appointment ledger showing 6 counselors' relatives promised offices after Celine's accession. The page could be genuine or bait. Lysandra sealed it inside a flour tin, noted who had access, and sent identical requests for the complete ledger to Ivan, Mora, and the palace auditor. Evidence did not become clean because it arrived conveniently. Her second life would not be built on convenient faith. Ivan answered first. He claimed the appointment ledger had been damaged by damp and offered a summary. Mora's office denied that any appointments were pending. The auditor requested 3 weeks. Their contradictions were more useful than the torn page. Lysandra sent each reply to the others under official seal. By evening, Ivan appeared at the kitchen suite, furious. "You have made my office accuse the queen." "No," she said. "I asked 3 offices to describe the same shelf." He admitted there were draft succession annexes, but said he could not release them without Mora's authority. Lysandra reminded him that the keeper of succession law answered to the High Council during disputed inheritance. Ivan whispered that the council was not yet formally disputed. She placed her broken first life clasp memory aside and focused on the present. "Then file my dispute." He looked older than 49. At last, he accepted the document and stamped it. The stamp dried while the corridor stayed silent. Mora responded by announcing a public blessing for Celine in the succession hall. The ceremony would display unity before the council could hear Lysandra's challenge. Lysandra attended in plain pearl ivory, refusing both morning black and rival crimson. When Mora invited her to place the crown clasp on Celine's mantle, Lysandra held it up and asked why the official clasp had been replaced with a lighter copy. The hall saw the weight difference before Mora could explain it. The Queen called it a jeweler's adjustment. Lysandra requested the original be entered into the succession inventory. Celine, caught between embarrassment and suspicion, unexpectedly agreed. Mora's gaze sharpened. The intact clasp was weighed, sealed, and placed under Ivan's custody. Lysandra had not proven a treaty, but she had moved the motif from private memory into public record. A crown that could not survive a question was only a polished threat. The visible discrepancy unsettled even Celine's closest courtiers. After the blessing, Wren reported that northern grain contracts had been cancelled by palace agents, then repurchased through intermediaries at triple price. The pattern would create scarcity just before the border crisis. He wanted to seize the warehouses. Lysandra refused. Seizure proves the shortage to everyone who cannot see the ledger. They would buy sample lots, inspect weights, and publish delivery routes instead. Wren disliked the delay, but accepted the civilian method. The Northern Duke's restraint became part of the evidence. They traveled separately to a riverside storehouse attached to Rose Palace lands. Lysandra arrived as a former negotiator, inspecting tariff compliance. Wren came later in a merchant's winter cloak that fooled no one. Barrels marked as spoiled grain held clean northern rye beneath a thin layer of mold. The shortage was manufactured by classification, not absence. Lysandra ordered independent scales brought into the courtyard and invited dock workers to witness every opened cask. Workers repeated the measurements to late-arriving neighbors. The warehouse overseers tried to close the gates. Wren stepped between them and the workers, but kept his sword sheathed. Lysandra cited harbor law, granting inspection during declared supply irregularity. No irregularity had been declared, the overseer argued. She showed him the palace's canceled contracts claiming regional failure. Your own excuse opened this door. By sunset, 60 adults had seen good grain hidden under false spoilage seals. The first public consequence had begun. Nobody could dismiss the opened casks as rumor afterward. Mora's ministers called the inspection reckless and accused Lysandra of humiliating honest merchants. Lysandra released no accusation. She published weights, dates, and photographs made by crystal etching, then asked merchants to explain discrepancies at an open hearing. 2 came voluntarily. A third fled, which was not proof of Mora's plan, but made the council curious. Celine sent a private note requesting the charcoal impression from the oath glass base. Lysandra sent a copy, not the original. Their signatures fixed the dispute beyond palace editing. Wren joined Lysandra on a palace roof overlooking the river lamps. He admitted he had expected her to use the warehouse scandal to rally a faction. She admitted she had expected him to threaten the overseers. "We are disappointing each other efficiently," he said. The humor surprised a laugh from her. Then he became serious. His scouts had found survey teams near the northern passes, carrying palace permits dated before the succession announcement. The difference between suspicion and proof protected everyone. The permits bore Celine's future royal seal, though she did not yet legally possess it. Lysandra's first life memory said Celine had signed the surrender after coronation. Now someone was preparing beforehand. She compared the seal's petal count with the imprint from the hidden ribbon. Both contained the same backward curve. A single palace engraver could have made them, but the order had to come from authority. She needed the workshop ledger before Mora erased it. River Wind lifted loose curls across her guarded expression. Lysandra entered the royal engraving room under the pretext of returning her revoked office plate. The master engraver had vanished on sudden leave. His bench was scrubbed, yet silver filings remained trapped in a cracked floor tile. Ivan, reluctantly accompanying her, identified crown-grade alloy. They found no forged seal. Instead, Lysandra recovered a rejected practice plate with Celine's name and an unfinished date. It proved preparation, not use, and that distinction mattered. The unfinished date made the preparation impossible to dismiss. Celine confronted them at the doorway, anger bright beneath her charm. She recognized the practice plate and admitted Mora had ordered it for continuity. She had asked no questions because she wanted the announcement secured before Lysandra's allies could object. The admission landed harder than denial. Lysandra told her, "Ambition is not the same as treason. It can still carry treason's papers." Celine took the plate and handed it back to Ivan for sealing. Celine's cooperation was reluctant, public, and therefore consequential. Celine asked Lysandra to meet without attendance in the empty succession hall. She claimed the northern annex promised trade access, not surrender, and repeated Mora's assurance that Wren planned to use Lysandra as a banner for secession. Lysandra did not defend Wren's character. She laid out the canceled grain contracts, survey permits, and copied seal. Judge the pattern, not the person. Celine's certainty wavered, but she refused to delay her coronation. The empty hall amplified every restrained word between them. The sisters stood on opposite sides of the oath-glass table. Lysandra proposed a temporary public review board with one appointee from each province. Celine heard an attempt to control her reign. "You want me to inherit only after you approve me," Lysandra answered. "I want the country to know what you are inheriting." Celine rejected the board, then quietly asked whether the frost lantern truly showed coercion. Lysandra said it showed only fracture, never guilt. Blue light waited dormant beneath the untouched crystal surface. Ivan brought news that Mora had scheduled the formal vote 6 weeks early. The law allowed acceleration during border instability, and palace reports now claimed northern raiders had crossed 2 villages. Wren's dispatches reported no raid. Lysandra needed independent witnesses before the rumor hardened into emergency fact. She chose to travel north, risking Mora's claim that she was abandoning court. "Absence can be forged into flight," Ivan warned. "Then record my departure publicly," she said. Ivan's seal made departure harder to rewrite as desertion. Wren objected to traveling together because it would look like an alliance before the council had approved their compact. Lysandra agreed and arranged separate processions departing 1 hour apart. His surprise was almost insulting. "You expected me to hide in your carriage?" "I expected you to argue for the safer road." "I am arguing for the safer government." He gave her the northern route codes and kept the better horses for her civilian escort. Their separate banners kept the journey from resembling flight. At the Rose Palace gates, Mora embraced Lysandra before witnesses and murmured that the North had always made her harsh. Lysandra answered aloud, "Then I will return with softer facts." The Queen's smile held. Celine watched from the balcony, wearing the black cherry heir's mantle and the copied clasp. Lysandra noticed she had pinned the black-red ribbon inside out, perhaps by accident, perhaps as a question she did not yet know how to ask. The reversed ribbon remained a private uncertainty between sisters. The road north crossed villages already preparing for a war no one could verify. Inns hoarded salt. Carters demanded emergency prices. Palace proclamations blamed Wren's provincial council for withholding grain, while northern notices blamed capital corruption. Lysandra stopped at each posting station and collected both versions under dated seal. Contradiction became geography. By the third day, she could trace the panic spread to couriers who had left Rose Palace before the alleged raid. Each copied notice narrowed the source of manufactured fear. At a mountain bridge, workers refused Wren's convoy passage because an emergency order reserved the route for royal troops. Wren could have cleared them by rank. Instead, he showed the workers the public compact limiting his authority and waited while Lysandra examined the order. The wax was fresh, but the paper bore a watermark discontinued 2 years earlier. Someone had used archived stock to imitate urgency. The bridge master opened the gate after witnessing the defect. Waiting cost time, but gained witnesses Mora could not erase. Snow closed behind them as they reached North Fortress, a stone complex built around blue-lit courtyards and heated cisterns. Wren's officers saluted him, then looked uncertainly at Lysandra. She asked to see evacuation maps before war plans. The request unsettled them more than a demand for troops. Wren directed her to the border war room and announced that every military proposal would include food, shelter, and road capacity. His command made her conditions operational. Frost blue lamps revealed every face watching her priorities change. The war room walls held relief maps of the passes, supply pegs, and weather glass. Lysandra found the 3 threatened routes marked with palace survey pins placed months earlier. Wren admitted his council had received offers to lease them to crown contractors, which he had rejected. He had not known the same terms were hidden inside succession papers. Together, they reconstructed the likely plan: surrender access, provoke incursion, then declare permanent emergency regency. The pins turned abstract betrayal into measurable roads and gates. Wren wanted to publish the theory immediately. Lysandra refused because the evidence still showed preparation, not intent. Truth was not a blade. It was a bridge that had to bear weight. They agreed on 3 tasks: verify the survey crews, inspect supply records, and test the oath glass rule with volunteers under controlled conditions. Wren assigned no one to watch Lysandra. The absence of surveillance felt stranger to her than trust should have. The sentence left the room quieter than accusation would have. The first test used a spare municipal oath glass, not the royal table. 5 adult council clerks touched it under frostlight and made harmless choices. One was privately threatened with losing a promotion if he selected blue. When he chose red, a black-red hairline appeared. When he later repeated the choice freely, the fracture did not vanish. Coercion marked the recorded vote permanently, but the glass could not say whether the threat changed his true preference. Every observer signed the test conditions before leaving. Lysandra insisted the clerk receive the promised promotion review anyway, so the experiment would not punish him for helping. Wren agreed and ordered the test protocol copied without names. They also discovered that group pressure alone did not fracture the glass unless it became a specific fear, enchantment, or physical force. Shame could influence a choice without leaving a mark. The tool was narrower than legend and, therefore, more useful in law. Narrow rules made the crystal harder to weaponize politically. A fortress quartermaster reported that lamp oil reserves had fallen to 9 days. The ledger blamed blocked southern wagons, yet Lysandra had seen those wagons pass the bridge. Wren prepared to ration heat. She asked for barrel measurements first. The storage room smelled of pine resin, not lamp oil. False labels covered full heating oil casks, while genuine lamp oil had been diverted to a private depot under a palace contractor's seal. The cold sharpened every mistake in the quartermaster's account. They followed the depot trail into a snowbound market square where merchants were bidding on state supplies they believed legally surplus. Lysandra halted the auction by reading the original procurement clause aloud from memory, then demanded the contract copy. Her remembered wording was close, but not exact. One changed phrase allowed resale after administrative release. Rather than bluff, she withdrew the challenge and asked who signed the release. The answer was Mora's household treasurer. Remembered language yielded to the document in her hands. Wren's officers urged seizure before the barrels disappeared. Lysandra proposed purchasing the smallest lot with provincial funds, preserving chain of custody, and freezing the rest through a merchant court order. It cost the North dearly in the moment. Wren approved it. "I can win a storehouse in 10 minutes," he told her. "You are making me win it again tomorrow." She replied, "Tomorrow is where governments usually lose." The purchased barrel became evidence no officer personally controlled. The merchant court convened inside the fortress chapel because snow blocked the town hall. Anonymous traders packed the benches. Lysandra presented invoices, barrel tests, and courier dates. She did not accuse Mora. She asked the court to determine whether the release was lawful. The judges froze the stock and summoned the palace contractor. Publicly, it was a supply ruling. Politically, it proved the North could resist manipulation without marching an army south. Snowmelt dripped between pews while merchants whispered about precedent. That evening, Wren found Lysandra repairing the crown clasp's hinge with a borrowed file. She had brought the intact present-life clasp, not the broken one from memory, yet her hands followed the old fracture line. Wren offered a jeweler. She refused. "I need to know where it fails." He sat across from her and sharpened map pins in silence. Their quiet did not ask for confession, which made it easier to remain. Metal dust silvered her fingers and dark sleeves. A courier from Celine arrived carrying only 3 sentences. The formal vote had moved again, Ivan's office was under guard, and Mora claimed Lysandra had crossed the border with Wren's army. The lie had outrun them. Lysandra ordered her public departure record copied to every provincial council and prepared to return without soldiers. Wren said the roads were unsafe. She answered, "Then guard the roads from here. Do not guard me into a throne." The message transformed delay from caution into immediate cost. Before she left, Wren showed her the Northern Mobilization Plan. Every unit was assigned to bridges, hospitals, granaries, and evacuation corridors outside the capital. No column had orders to approach the palace. He asked her to sign as civilian observer, not commander. Lysandra added a clause requiring units to withdraw when the lawful council certified the crisis ended. Wren signed beneath it. The compact gained an ending before either of them knew whether they would survive it. Their paired signatures denied either side permanent military leverage. A blizzard forced Lysandra's return party into an abandoned toll station. There she found survey markings carved into the beams, matching the hidden annex map. The marks identified not invasion routes, but toll transfers. 3 passes would become private revenue zones controlled by Crown appointees. The manufactured crisis was also a debt solution. Mora could pay council creditors with Northern Customs income while claiming national defense. Motive had finally joined mechanism. Ice filmed the windows as she calculated Mora's reward structure. Wren arrived hours later after checking the rear road. He was furious she had entered the unstable station alone. Lysandra was equally furious that he had followed after agreeing to remain with his command. Their argument sharpened until the roof shed a load of snow between them. Wren looked at the buried doorway and said, "The building has voted." Lysandra laughed despite herself, then made him promise to return north at dawn. The collapsed doorway made their disagreement briefly, absurdly practical. They spent the night mapping creditor names from appointment ledgers against projected toll grants. 6 counselors appeared in both lists. Coercion and reward overlapped. Some might be frightened, some complicit, some both. Lysandra refused to classify them before testimony. Wren asked whether she could forgive a counselor who had sold a vote. "Forgiveness is private," she said. "Authority requires a record." He understood the distinction and did not ask whether it applied to Celine. Neither loyalty nor guilt could substitute for individual evidence. At dawn, they discovered a palace courier frozen near the road, but alive. His satchel contained staged raid reports written in 3 different hands, all describing the same impossible sunrise direction. Lysandra warmed him, took his statement, and offered safe passage rather than arrest. He admitted he had been paid to deliver sealed reports, not to verify them. The evidence tied the false crisis to palace dispatch channels without proving Mora personally ordered it. His survival prevented the false reports from becoming anonymous facts. Wren wanted the courier protected at North Fortress. Lysandra chose a neutral provincial monastery instead, fearing his testimony would be dismissed as northern custody. The courier agreed. Wren's jaw tightened, but he accepted her logic. Their attraction lived most clearly in these refusals. Each could say no without punishment. Before separating, he handed her no weapon, only a frost lens, and the merchant court's certified supply ruling. Neutral custody protected both the witness and Wren's credibility. Lysandra returned to Rose Palace through the public south gate with 12 civilian wagons and no soldiers. The wagons carried purchased lamp oil, court records, and copies of the mobilization compact. Citizens expecting an armed claimant found accountants, drivers, and sealed barrels. Mora's heralds had prepared speeches about invasion. The image ruined them. Celine watched from the steps, visibly startled by the absence of Wren. The crowd's confusion became Lysandra's first defensive victory. Mora welcomed Lysandra before the crowd and accused the North of engineering shortages. Lysandra opened one barrel and invited palace inspectors to test it. Then she presented the merchant ruling and asked Mora to release the contractor's authorization. The queen answered that wartime confidentiality protected procurement decisions. "There is no declared war," Lysandra said. Mora's expression hardened. "There may be by morning." The threat was indirect, but everyone heard it. A physician tested the oil while citizens watched. Ivan was not in the hall. His office doors were sealed for inventory correction. Lysandra used her filed succession dispute to demand access, but palace guards claimed emergency orders superseded it. She did not force entry. Instead, she sat outside with the certified record and invited petitioners to join the queue. By sunset, clerks, merchants, and 2 counselors waited beside her. A locked door had become a public exhibit. The patient queue denied the guards an easy confrontation. Celine arrived after dark and dismissed the guards under her authority as named heir. It was the first time she acted against Mora in public, though she framed it as administrative efficiency. Inside, shelves had been stripped. Ivan's personal seal box remained, empty except for a thread of black-red ribbon and ash. Celine whispered that she had seen Mora burn drafts the previous night. Lysandra asked why she had not stopped her. Celine had no answer. Ash clung to the empty compartment like deliberate punctuation. They found Ivan confined in the adjoining archive room, unharmed but exhausted. He had hidden the earliest treaty drafts inside the hollow base of the oath-glass transport case before guards removed him. The drafts showed 3 versions: public trade language, private toll transfer, and a final emergency clause granting Mora regency powers after coronation. Ivan had prepared them under direct royal instruction, believing refusal would cost his adult daughter's judgeship. His confession supplied authorship, sequence, and personal cost. Lysandra offered him protected testimony without promising immunity. Ivan accepted. Celine read the final clause twice, then insisted her signature appeared only on the public version. Ivan confirmed that Mora planned to attach the private annex after the oath-glass vote, using Celine's pre-made seal. Celine's face emptied of color. She had sought the crown and ignored warnings, but the mechanism was designed to make her reign dependent before it began. Celine finally saw the crown as a trap with hinges. Celine demanded to know whether Lysandra had ever planned to imprison her. Lysandra answered no, then asked the question she had avoided since waking. "Did you order my arrest after the first council vote?" Celine stared at her. In this life, no arrest existed, but Lysandra described the departure order she remembered seeing under Celine's seal. Celine recognized the wording. It was the same language Mora had used to warn that Lysandra had fled north. Her question crossed a lifetime neither sister could verify. Ivan opened a sealed registry of royal orders. The first life document was not there, but a blank departure form had already been prepared with Celine's copied seal and Lysandra's title. The date field waited empty. Celine understood before Lysandra spoke. Mora had planned to isolate each sister with matching lies. Lysandra arrested as a traitor. Celine told she had escaped with Wren. The old memory changed meaning without becoming less painful. The blank date waited like an open cell door. Celine admitted she would have believed it. She had spent years treating Lysandra's caution as contempt and Mora's praise as proof of love. "I wanted the crown enough to let other people do my reading," she said. Lysandra did not absolve her. "Then start reading now." Celine agreed to help expose the annexes, but she would not withdraw her claim unless coercion was proven. Responsibility remained between them, sharp and useful. The admission changed responsibility without granting absolution. The midpoint truth left Lysandra unsteady. She had built part of her resolve around believing Celine chose the arrest. Now the enemy was narrower and the wound more complicated. Ren was far north. She could not borrow his certainty even if she wanted it. She went alone to the palace kitchens, ate bread standing beside the ovens, and revised every plan that depended on Celine's guilt. Memory had given her direction, not permission to stop thinking. She let the oven's heat steady her breathing. Mora moved first. At dawn, proclamations announced that northern saboteurs had poisoned the capital's grain. Crowds surged toward bakeries. The grain was safe, but fear could empty shelves faster than poison. Lysandra ordered the lamp oil wagons converted into mobile inspection stations. Bakers, physicians, and guild representatives tested flour in public. Celine appeared beside her and ate the first loaf. Their shared gesture slowed the panic without pretending trust had healed. Public testing replaced panic with a repeatable civic act. Anonymous men tried to overturn a wagon and shouted that Lysandra had brought northern disease. Ren's soldiers were hundreds of miles away. Palace guards watched without intervening. Lysandra directed dock workers to form a human lane, not attack the agitators. Celine ordered the guards to protect the testing tables. When one agitator dropped a purse stamped by Mora's household office, Lysandra sealed it as evidence and released the man after taking witness names. Restraint kept frightened workers from becoming convenient enemies. Mora condemned the disturbance and claimed the purse had been planted. She then offered to declare emergency authority for everyone's safety. Lysandra requested the exact legal trigger be read aloud. Ivan, restored to his office by Celine's order, stated that emergency regency required verified invasion, incapacitated monarch, and disrupted succession. None existed. Mora replied that all three could exist by nightfall. Her plan depended on making predictions sound like necessity. Ivan's reading stripped prophecy from Mora's manufactured urgency. The queen summoned Celine privately. Lysandra did not follow or hide a listening device. She waited in the succession hall with the copied drafts. Celine returned an hour later, eyes swollen but posture controlled. Mora had threatened to expose private letters from Celine's former lover and ruin the adult woman's diplomatic career. Lysandra refused to use the letters as counter-blackmail. "Your privacy is not our weapon," she said. Celine burned only her own copy. The protected omission became a model for later witnesses. Celine disclosed the threat in a sworn statement without naming the former lover. Ivan certified that a counselor could describe coercion while protecting unrelated intimacy. The distinction encouraged two counselors to request safe testimony. One had been threatened with his husband's dismissal from the Naval Board. Another had accepted a promised governorship and then been warned it would vanish if he reconsidered. Neither story was clean. Both belonged in the record. Nuance entered the record where scandal had been expected. Lysandra created a testimony room in Rose Palace with 2 entrances, neutral clerks, and no armed guards inside. Ren sent written confirmation that northern forces would protect roads only, but she kept his letter sealed unless Mora claimed invasion. Counselors could speak, refuse, or return later. She promised no pardon, only protection from retaliation during review. Mercy without a record became permission. Punishment without safety produced only better lies. the unarmed room made hesitation survivable for compromised adults. A third counselor arrived, intending to confess, then fled when he saw Celine in the corridor. Celine realized her presence itself could feel coercive. She moved to another wing and issued a public statement that no testimony would be treated as betrayal of her. The action cost her visible support among courtiers who wanted a decisive heir. Lysandra noticed the cost and said nothing. Praise would have made it feel like payment. Her distance gave frightened testimony space to continue. Ivan recovered the oath glass transport case from storage. Its crystal table had been moved to the High Council chamber for the accelerated vote, but frostlight inspection required a northern lens set at 4 corners. Mora controlled palace access. Lysandra proposed demonstrating the method publicly on the municipal sample first. Ivan warned that revealing the test might let Mora replace the table. Then we inventory the table before the demonstration, Lysandra said. The transport case now mattered as much as the crystal. They entered the High Council under daylight with Celine, Ivan, and 3 neutral craftspeople. The royal oath glass showed no visible fracture in normal light. Its silver base matched the official inventory, including a shallow scratch shaped like a crescent. The craftspeople measured weight and resonance, then sealed each corner. Lysandra did not activate the frost lens. She wanted Mora to know the table could no longer be exchanged unnoticed. Each measurement turned sacred mystery into accountable procedure. Mora appeared in the gallery and accused Lysandra of staging a magical spectacle to overturn lawful succession. Lysandra invited her to appoint 2 observers for the frostlight test. The queen declined, saying sacred objects should not be subjected to provincial tricks. Ren's absence made the refusal harder to blame on intimidation. Celine asked her mother directly whether she feared the glass. Mora answered, "I fear what your sister will make people believe." The refusal sounded weaker because northern troops remained absent. The statement revealed Mora's strength. She did not need every document hidden. She needed every fact interpreted as Lysandra's hunger for power. Lysandra changed strategy. Instead of announcing herself as alternative heir, she petitioned for a free vote with all candidates permitted to withdraw or stand after review. She offered to accept Celine if the uncoerced council chose her. The concession startled supporters who had already begun calling Lysandra the rightful queen. Procedure became the ground on which either sister could stand. Some of those supporters turned angry. They had risked reputations expecting restoration, not procedure. A retired general demanded that Lysandra call Ren south and end the uncertainty. She dismissed him from her advisory circle when he suggested temporary detention of Mora. The move cost her a public advocate. It also clarified her boundary. Soldiers guarded roads. They did not choose rulers. The phrase spread faster than any campaign slogan she had authorized. The dismissal warned ambitious allies that her boundary was real. Ren received reports of unrest and requested permission to move 2 units closer to the capital's outer bridges. Lysandra approved only after provincial councils along the route signed civilian requests. She denied his request to station scouts within sight of the palace. His reply was blunt. "Your line increases risk." Hers was equally blunt. "Crossing it increases the wrong risk." He obeyed, then sent updated evacuation maps without complaint. Their written disagreement preserved trust better than easy obedience. The palace kitchens became an accidental headquarters. Bakers compared grain seals, clerks copied testimony schedules, and noble petitioners learned to wait beside sacks of onions. Celine arrived in a jeweled mantle and was handed a flower apron by mistake. She stared at it, then tied it on. Lysandra nearly smiled. "Do not make this symbolic," Celine warned. "I was going to say it clashes with your politics." Their old rhythm surfaced, lighter but not repaired. Flour dust softened the severe lines of court clothing. A messenger brought proof that the supposed poisoned grain had been mixed with harmless black cherry dye from palace confectioners. The color was dramatic, the danger false. Purchase records led to Mora's household office, but the order bore a clerk's initials. Lysandra refused to arrest the clerk without testimony. Instead, she published the dye test and the invoice chain. Public fear cooled into anger, which was more useful and more dangerous. Receipts made the harmless color politically poisonous. Mora scheduled a royal procession through the market, intending to reclaim control. Lysandra predicted a staged attack based on first life memory, but her changed actions made the route different. She could not rely on the remembered alley. She studied current barricade requests and found one unusually wide passage reserved for palace carriages. Rather than cancel the procession, she asked guild stewards to line the route and keep side streets open for evacuation. Current logistics mattered more than remembered scenery. During the procession, a smoke pot erupted beneath Mora's carriage. The crowd recoiled. Men in servant livery shouted that northern assassins were attacking. Guild stewards opened the planned side routes, preventing a crush. Lysandra climbed onto a fountain and directed adults toward 3 exits, while Celine pulled Mora from the carriage. No soldier appeared. The smoke smelled of black cherry dye and lamp resin from the same household purchases. The open routes absorbed fear before it became a stampede. One agitator lunged at Lysandra with a ceremonial knife too dull for battle, but sharp enough to create blood. Celine knocked his arm aside. Lysandra trapped his wrist against the fountain rim. Palace guards moved to kill him. She ordered them to take him alive. Under public witness, he confessed only that a household steward promised debt relief. He did not know Mara's full plan. Focused schemes still traveled through people who saw only fragments. Saving him alive preserved testimony Mara had expected to vanish. Mara emerged coughing and claimed Lysandra had endangered the crown by allowing the procession. Lysandra answered that the queen had chosen the route, and her office had bought the smoke materials. She did not claim Mara ordered the attack. She asked for an independent inquiry and surrendered control of the evidence to Ivan. The restraint frustrated the crowd, which wanted a villain named immediately. Law moved slower than fury, because it had to remain useful afterward. The crowd's disappointment did not alter the burden of proof. That night, Lysandra found Ren waiting in the border war room through a frost mirror connection, his image faint and blue. He had heard about the knife. "I am trying not to issue an order I do not possess," he said. She understood the effort beneath the bluntness. "Then ask." He asked whether she was hurt. She showed him the uncut sleeve. Neither called the relief tenderness, but the silence afterward held it. Blue light made his restraint visible across the distance. Ren reported that armed royal units were moving toward the capital from the surrendered pass corridor, carrying Mara's emergency insignia before any emergency existed. He could block them at the northern bridges, but that risked being framed as rebellion. Lysandra instructed him to open the roads wider, establish inspection stations with civilian magistrates, and record every unit's orders. "You want witnesses between armies," he said. "I want fewer reasons for armies to become answers." The request kept military reporting beneath civilian authority. Celine discovered that Mara had prepared a decree naming her mentally unfit immediately after coronation. The emergency regency was never meant to preserve Celine's authority. She brought the decree to Lysandra without copying it first, a small act of trust and poor evidence handling. Lysandra made her return with Ivan, seal the original, and record where it was found. Celine groaned. "Must betrayal have filing procedures?" "Especially betrayal," Lysandra said. Evidence handling became Celine's least glamorous political education. The decree shifted Celine's remaining allies. Some abandoned Mara. Others urged Celine to proceed with coronation and dismiss her mother afterward. Lysandra warned that once the coerced vote entered the oath glass, the fracture would remain, and every later law could be challenged. Celine accused her of wanting purity no government possessed. Lysandra answered that freedom was not purity. It was the minimum condition under which responsibility could belong to the chooser. Her answer gave imperfection a lawful place in government. Mora ordered palace guards to close the testimony room, citing security after the procession. Ivan produced the succession dispute statute and refused. Guards surrounded the doors. Lysandra instructed witnesses to leave through the rear exit rather than create a confrontation. Then she moved the testimony room to the open courtyard. Rain began. Counselors spoke beneath kitchen awnings while citizens watched from balconies. Mora's attempt at secrecy created the most public record yet. Rain soaked silk, wool, and rank without distinction. A counselor confessed that Mora held his family's debt notes and had promised to forgive them after a vote for Celine. He had still preferred Celine before the threat. The nuance mattered. Coercion contaminated the process, even when it aligned with preference. Ivan explained that the oath glass would fracture because the choice was no longer voluntary. The counselor wept with relief and shame. Lysandra offered no absolution, only protection until review. His mixed motives made the coercion clearer, not simpler. By morning, 7 counselors had testified, enough to compel an open high council under succession law. Mora could still preside as queen and control palace guards. Lysandra requested that all armed personnel remain beyond the chamber's inner doors. Mora refused. Ivan negotiated a narrow compromise. Guards could stand in the outer gallery, visible but unable to hear individual votes. Lysandra accepted, while preparing a way to challenge even that pressure. The compromise reduced pressure without pretending the chamber was safe. On the eve of council, Lysandra inspected the oath glass seals again. One corner had been warmed and reset, leaving the crescent scratch intact, but changing the table's resonance. Mora had not replaced the crystal. She had inserted a thin rose gold plate beneath it to block frostlight from below. The alteration would hide fractures without erasing them. Because the inventory included resonance measurements, the tampering could be proven before the vote. The altered tone betrayed interference before the hidden metal appeared. Ivan wanted to remove the plate immediately. Lysandra stopped him. If they repaired the glass in secret, Mora could claim they had altered it. They summoned the same craftspeople, Celine and Mora's appointed observers. Under ordinary lamps, the plate looked decorative. Under side frostlight, its edge glowed warm against the silver frame. Mora called it routine reinforcement. The inventory contained no authorization, and Ivan entered the discrepancy into the public record. Shared witnesses made concealment more dangerous than the defect itself. The craftspeople warned that removing the plate could crack the table if rushed. The vote was scheduled for noon. Lysandra asked whether frostlight could be directed from the 4 sides instead of below. It could, but every corner lens had to be aligned simultaneously and held steady throughout the voluntary declarations. The method required cooperation among opposing observers. Mora could refuse. Ivan ruled that any candidate could request a lawful integrity test before the first vote. The solution depended on alignment, patience, and hostile hands cooperating. Ren's northern units reached the outer capital roads before dawn. They built no camps facing the city. Instead, they marked evacuation lanes, repaired a flooded bridge, and posted supply counts where travelers could inspect them. Royal units approached from the north, carrying sealed orders to restore crown access. Ren met their commander at a roadside table with civilian magistrates present. He offered passage for unarmed relief wagons and denied armed entry pending council review. Posted numbers made the army's limited purpose visible to travelers. Mora's commander accused Ren of treason and demanded single combat authority under old war custom. Ren declined. "My soldiers are not here to decorate your story." He ordered tea brought for both delegations and kept the road open to civilian traffic between them. The standoff became absurdly polite and strategically immovable. Every hour without blood weakened Mora's claim that invasion required emergency rule. His refusal denied Mora the dramatic enemy her plan required. Steam rose between the waiting officers. Inside Rose Palace, Mora offered Lysandra one final private arrangement. She would withdraw the emergency clause, preserve Celine's accession, and restore Lysandra as border minister with expanded powers. In return, the testimony record would be sealed for 50 years. The offer resembled every compromise Lysandra remembered making in the first life. Useful authority purchased with hidden damage. She refused. A secret correction leaves the machine ready for its next victim. The familiar bargain revealed how thoroughly Mora understood Lysandra's old weaknesses. Mora's composure cracked. She accused Lysandra of valuing procedure over family, and warned that public exposure would destroy Celine as well. Lysandra answered that Celine's choices would be judged, not erased. Mora said queenship required protecting the realm from truths citizens could not carry. "Then you never trusted the realm," Lysandra said. She left before anger could turn the confrontation into the evidence Mora wanted. The accusation exposed love used as another name for obedience. Lysandra carried that knowledge into the corridor. Celine waited outside and asked whether Mora had offered Lysandra the crown directly. Lysandra told her the exact terms. Celine believed her, then flinched at how much that belief cost. She confessed that part of her still wanted the vote to proceed and choose her freely. Lysandra did not shame the desire. "Stand then, but stand without our mother's hand around the council's throat." Celine agreed to request Frostlight herself. Celine's request converted private doubt into public procedural courage. The High Council opened beneath pearl banners and armed guards in the outer gallery. Mora sat at the head, Celine to her right, Lysandra at the petitioner's table, and Ivan beside the oath glass. The earlier treaty drafts remained sealed in clear cases with blank-facing covers, visible but unreadable from the gallery. Every counselor entered through 2 lines of citizens, witnesses, and clerks. There would be no private version of the day. The open entrances made every arriving counselor part of the visible record. Mora began by declaring the Northern Road standoff an invasion. Ivan read Ren's compact and the civilian magistrate's reports. His army had remained outside the capital, protected evacuation routes, and allowed unarmed passage. Mora demanded the documents be excluded as Northern propaganda. 3 Southern magistrates had countersigned them. The claim of invasion weakened. Mora shifted to instability, arguing that the prolonged dispute itself required immediate succession. The countersignatures anchored military fact outside either royal faction. Mora's urgency began to look manufactured. Lysandra presented the treaty sequence. The public draft promised trade coordination. The hidden annex transferred toll control over 3 northern passes. The emergency clause gave Mora regency power after a crisis already being manufactured through false raids and supply manipulation. She connected each claim to dates, invoices, and testimony, never to memory. When Mora called the pattern coincidence, Ivan produced the prepared incapacity decree for Celine. The incapacity decree connected the hidden annex to Celine's planned removal. Counselors leaned closer despite themselves. Celine read the decree aloud herself. Her voice remained steady until the line authorizing Mora to suspend the new queen's seal. She looked at the counselors who had applauded her announcement and said, "This document does not make me innocent. It makes my ambition useful to someone else." She requested the oath glass integrity test before any vote on her claim. Mora ordered her to sit. Celine remained standing. Her refusal broke the first command Mora had expected ambition to enforce. Silence followed. 4 frost lenses were placed at the oath-glass corners. Mora's observers held 2. Ivan and a neutral craftswoman held the others. Their hands had to align the blue beams. The rose-gold blocking plate distorted the first attempt. Lysandra used the repaired hinge of her silver crown clasp as a narrow, reflective brace, redirecting one beam beneath the plate without touching the crystal. The old symbol of inheritance became a practical tool. No single person controlled the resulting light or its interpretation. Under joined frostlight, black-red fractures spread through the table like roots beneath ice. Gasps broke across the chamber. The marks proved that prior test declarations and prepared proxy votes had been made under coercion. They did not identify Mora. Lysandra said so before anyone else could. The glass shows injury to choice, not the hand that caused it. Then Ivan opened the testimony record and linked named threats to individual fractures. The clear limitation made the evidence stronger than mystical certainty. Mora attacked the method, claiming northern magic had stained the glass. Her own observers had held the lenses, and the municipal demonstration protocol had been filed weeks earlier. She ordered the guards inside. Ivan invoked the disputed succession clause, suspending royal control of chamber security during evidentiary review. The captain hesitated. Celine stepped between the doors and the table. "Obey the law you were assigned to protect," she said. The guards stayed in the gallery. The captain's hesitation became the chamber's first visible transfer of power. Mora turned to the counselors. She reminded them of debts, scandals, and promised offices without naming any threat directly. Fear moved through the room. Lysandra did not demand courage. She offered each person the right to postpone, testify privately, or abstain without losing current office during review. The pressure eased enough for choices to become possible. A free vote could still wound, but it could not be owned. Options replaced demanded heroism with choices frightened adults could actually make. One counselor asked whether Lysandra would punish everyone who had supported Celine. Lysandra answered that lawful votes were not crimes, while forged seals, threats, and fraudulent contracts would be investigated individually. She would not treat preference as treason. Another asked whether Wren would occupy the capital if she lost. Ivan read the compact's withdrawal clause. Wren's army would leave when the council certified the roads safe, regardless of the winner. The distinction reassured opponents without excusing criminal conduct. Mora produced a sealed order claiming Wren had agreed to make Lysandra queen in exchange for hereditary control of the passes. The signature resembled his. Lysandra did not dismiss it by loyalty. She compared its wax to the bridge order and found the same discontinued watermark beneath the page. More decisively, Wren's elected title could not grant hereditary control under Northern law. Ivan admitted the order had entered his office through Mora's household channel. Material law exposed what copied handwriting alone could not settle. The forged order did not end the danger. Outside, royal units began pushing toward the repaired bridge, perhaps acting on delayed commands. A messenger entered the chamber with mud to his knees. Wren had withdrawn his front line 50 yards to keep civilians between neither force, then opened a second evacuation road. He requested no authority from Lysandra, only formal confirmation that the council remained in session. Ivan sent it under the chamber seal. His request treated the council seal, not Lysandra, as civilian authority. Mora declared the messenger proof that military pressure surrounded the vote. Lysandra agreed that any nearby army could frighten councillors. She proposed suspending the succession decision until both forces withdrew beyond visible range while preserving the council session. Celine supported her. Mora opposed delay. The contrast exposed who needed urgency. The council voted procedurally, by raised hands rather than oath glass, to continue evidence review and order both armies back. Delay preserved legitimacy while removing Mora's advantage of haste. Ren obeyed within minutes. The royal commander refused, citing Mora's emergency insignia. Because no emergency had been lawfully declared, the commander's written refusal became fresh evidence of pre-authorized force. Southern magistrates blocked his supply carts under ordinary road law. No battle began. The capital heard bells, not cannon. Ren's patience outside made room for Lysandra's case inside, but it did not decide the chamber for her. Ordinary road rules accomplished what a battlefield victory would have endangered. Witnesses logged every halted cart. Ivan then produced the earliest sealed drafts from the transport case. His testimony implicated himself as well as Mora. He described the threat to his daughter's judgeship and admitted every document he had prepared. Mora accused him of saving his career. "I am ending it," he said. He resigned as chancellor effective after the session and asked the council to judge his conduct separately. The admission strengthened the record because it cost him. His resignation prevented confession from becoming a bargain for continued power. Celine approached the oath glass before anyone called the succession vote. She placed her hand on the crystal and withdrew her claim until a free council could reconvene after coercion review. The glass remained clear under frostlight. She did not endorse Lysandra. She did not request forgiveness. She simply removed the ambition Mora had built around. The chamber exhaled as if a locked window had opened. The clear crystal recorded withdrawal, without revealing regret or motive. Celine stepped back alone. Mora tried to invoke maternal royal authority to reject the withdrawal. Ivan cited the oldest voluntary choice provision. No candidate could be compelled to stand. The Queen then attempted to dismiss the council. A majority refused, using the same disputed succession statute Lysandra had filed weeks earlier. Authority shifted not through arrest or sword, but through a document Mora had believed too slow to matter. The procedural majority held because no claimant commanded it. Mora's dismissal order remained unread. The council suspended Mora's emergency powers pending inquiry and transferred temporary chamber authority to a 5-province panel. Lysandra opposed placing herself on it. Celine also declined. Their absence prevented either claimant from controlling the review. Mora was escorted to her private apartments, not a dungeon, under civilian watch. She looked at Lysandra with something colder than hatred. Disbelief that restraint had defeated a plan built on everyone else's fear. Civilian custody preserved dignity without restoring influence or access. For 3 days, counselors testified, contracts were audited, and the Northern Road orders were verified. 2 counselors admitted taking rewards without threats. 3 had been coerced. Others had supported Celine freely. The distinctions complicated every speech and protected the final vote from becoming revenge. Lysandra spent those days answering questions in public sessions, including whether her own border policies had concentrated too much discretion in the crown. She admitted where they had. Her admissions made the charter's later limits credible rather than ornamental. Ren remained outside the capital until the 5-province panel certified the roads safe. He did not request entry for celebration. When Lysandra sent thanks, he replied with the final supply count and a note. Compact ending as written. She held the paper longer than necessary. Their work together had been defined by limits. The fact that he honored the last one made the possibility beyond it feel real. The Free Succession Council reconvened with the oath glass repaired, the blocking plate removed, and 4 frost lenses operated by mixed provincial observers. Celine chose not to stand. 2 distant adult cousins submitted claims through lawful representatives, and Lysandra stood on a platform requiring public questions. She promised no restoration of old privilege. She proposed a written crown charter before asking for a single vote. The charter limited emergency powers to 30 days without council renewal, required public review of major treaties, protected elected provincial councils, and forbade private military compacts from determining succession. It also created safe testimony procedures and independent custody for the oath glass. Several of Lysandra's supporters objected that she was weakening the crown before wearing it. "Then the limits are real," she answered. "Power surrendered only after victory is usually theater." Councillors touched the crystal one by one and spoke voluntary choices. Frostlight remained clear. Some voted for other candidates. Most chose Lysandra. The result was not unanimous, and she was grateful for that. Unanimity would have looked like another pressure. When Ivan announced her election, Lysandra did not lift the high crown. She signed the charter first, then asked every provincial representative to countersign before the clasp was fastened. Mora's inquiry found that she directed forged seals, coercive appointments, fraudulent supply orders, and unauthorized troop movements. The council permanently removed her regency authority and confined her to a supervised royal estate with council and public proceedings. Ivan accepted removal and a 5-year ban from office. His testimony protected his daughter, but did not erase his participation. Lysandra refused spectacle for either of them. The new government would not imitate the secrecy it condemned. Celine left court for 1 year under a voluntary exclusion from office. She chose provincial treaty work in towns harmed by the false shortages, without title or guaranteed return. In the Rose Palace courtyard, she asked whether she and Lysandra would ever be sisters again. Lysandra answered, "We can become something honest. I do not know its name yet." Celine accepted distance without calling it cruelty or forgiveness. Rennes entered the capital only after the defense compact formally dissolved and his soldiers began returning north. He came with 2 civilian magistrates and no ceremonial guard. In the High Council corridor, he met Lysandra with no command between them. She thanked him for ending the compact exactly as written. He asked whether the new queen intended to renegotiate northern autonomy. "Publicly," she said. Rennes smiled. "Good. Agreement would have been suspicious." Months of negotiation followed. Lysandra visited North Fortress under the charter's travel rules, while Rennes attended council as an elected provincial duke, not her military subordinate. They disputed toll shares, winter road maintenance, and whether fortress tea qualified as a weapon. Their attraction survived budgets, minutes, and witnesses. That endurance mattered more than a ballroom confession, because neither had to become smaller for the other to remain. When the northern passes reopened under public treaty review, Celine returned briefly as a trainee observer, taking notes instead of giving orders. She caught an ambiguous customs phrase before anyone signed. Lysandra corrected it and recorded the amendment. There was no embrace, only a shared look and a small nod. Accountability had not erased affection. It had made affection wait its turn and earn a shape beyond inheritance. In the border war room, Rennes struck the final ceremonial clause from the expired defense compact. 1 copy went to the provincial archive and 1 to the capital. Then he asked, with unusual caution, whether Lysandra would consider a courtship granting neither of them jurisdiction over the other. She let the question rest. "Yes," she said, "provided disagreements remain admissible." His quiet laugh warmed the frost-blue room. Rennes touched her hand only after she turned it palm upward. Their first kiss was brief, mutual, and warm beneath the fortress lamps, with no soldiers present to mistake tenderness for policy. When they parted, Lysandra kept her forehead near his for 1 breath. "Still suspicious?" she asked. "Constantly," he said. She smiled because trust between them had never required obedience, only honest limits kept under pressure. 10 months after the coup that never happened, the high crown returned from the royal jeweler. Its clasp had been repaired with a visible silver seam instead of hidden beneath enamel. Lysandra chose the design herself. The seam crossed the metal like a remembered road. She would not hide the break that had taught the crown where to bend, or let polished perfection become another official lie. The black-red border ribbon once used to conceal surrender terms became the binding of the public crown charter. Copies rested in every provincial hall, their dark edge immediately recognizable. Citizens could request the text, challenge emergency renewals, and inspect treaty notices. A symbol of secret coercion became a practical handle for public law, touched by ordinary hands instead of hidden beneath an oath glass. At the reopened Northern Road, grain wagons passed through jointly staffed customs gates. No royal banner covered provincial seals. The old toll station became a public records office, where Celine worked one season before earning review for an envoy post. Her first royal assignment was deliberately small, renegotiating river weights with merchant councils. Blood opened no door that documented work could not keep open. On the anniversary of the free vote, Lysandra stood in the succession hall beneath pearl banners and touched the silver seam at her shoulder. Wren waited among provincial delegates, not beside the throne. When their eyes met, neither bowed first. The crown recorded where it had broken, the charter recorded why, and the open doors recorded who now possessed the right to enter, question, and leave unafraid. Would you have trusted Celine after learning how Mora used both sisters, or required the same long-distance Lysandra chose? Share your answer and subscribe to Her Second Crown for more complete royal fantasy stories about women who reclaim power without becoming the tyranny that betrayed them.